All right, hello again, everyone. Okay, today we're going to look at this article called Television Addiction by Mary Wynn. You can see up there. So let's take a look at what we know about this. Like always, we want to go up here to the information in the top. And we see that, where is it? We see here, this is an excerpt. All right, can you see that? An excerpt. If I can get this. There we go. So we see this is an excerpt from a larger book on television. Because of that, maybe we're going to see some things that fit into a larger argument. Maybe not. We'll have to see. Okay. Anyway, let's take a look at how she decides to begin this article. She says, the word addiction is often used loosely and wryly in conversation and so on. Okay. And then she says in the second paragraph, people often refer to being hooked on TV. Right here, if you can see the highlight, we have a rhetorical question. Whoops. There we go. It says, does this too fall into the lighthearted category of cookie eating and other pleasures that people pursue with unusual intensity, or is there a kind of television viewing that falls into the more serious category of destructive addiction? Now, normally you would think, wouldn't you want to begin your essay with a rhetorical question? Yeah, but if you look at this question, the way it's written, it relies on something to have come before it. So let's look at what comes before it. Right here, that's a signal that we're probably going to be defining something, right? The word addiction, and then she's going to do some definitions here. But the definitions she gives are not what you'd normally use. So in other words, we talk about addiction. Normally, when you talk about addiction, you usually mean substance abuse of some kind, addicted to a drug or something. But she's saying this is used loosely and wryly, like being addicted to mystery books, or being a cookie addict, okay? Or even, there we go, gardening, okay? Then she says, yet nobody really believes that reading mysteries or ordering seeds by catalog is serious enough to be cared with addictions to heroin or alcohol. Now that's what we normally assume, right? When we say addiction, we normally think in terms of drugs. So what she's doing in these first, I'm just going to highlight the whole area there, just like that, okay, is she's challenging us to redefine what the word addiction means. We use it, as she says, loosely and wryly in conversation for gardening, mystery books, cookies, and so on. And then says we talk about being addicted to television. And then she asks the fundamental question, is this lighthearted to say, oh, I'm addicted to TV? Is that the same sort of thing as saying I'm addicted to cookies or gardening? Or is it worse? So that's how she's setting this up. Let me scroll just a little bit here. Okay. Excuse me. Sorry. When we think about addiction to drugs or alcohol, it says right here. All right. So we're back on more familiar ground. We frequently focus on negative aspects and ignoring the pleasures that accompany drinking or drug taking. Okay. So we're back on more familiar ground here about addiction as it applies to drugs and alcohol. Okay. But we're going to go carefully through what the word addiction means. It means not feeling normal without the object of your addiction, in this case, alcohol. The need to repeat the behavior. I'm going to scroll again here, if I can. Hold on. There we go. Let me just open this up a little bit. I gotta open up the there we go. I just made the screen a little bit smaller so we can fit it in there. So anyway, we were here about addiction as it applies to drugs and alcohol. So we started out with We say addiction in sort of a fun way about fun things like reading books or eating cookies or gardening. But then she gets into this is what addiction means when we apply it to our ordinary things like drugs and alcohol. At some point, she's going to have to connect these two ideas, and she does so right there. Okay, not unlike drugs or alcohol, the television experience allows the participant to blot out the real world. So now's our connection between the frivolous use of addiction that is in gardening or mystery books with the more serious use of addiction with drugs and alcohol. By saying that, not unlike drugs and alcohol, the television experience, we're sort of tacitly answering the question, no, this is serious. This isn't a lighthearted, silly little thing. Okay? Does it again here. Whoops. Just as alcoholics are only incotely aware of their addiction. Meaning this is like, this word here is vague. I guess the word means vague. The word isn't vague, it just means vague. I suppose is the closest one. Okay. So we've sort of answered our rhetorical question that she posed. Is television addiction serious or frivolous? It's serious in the sense that it's like drugs and alcohol. She's saying it's the same. Okay. And she's going here and just listing through. You see all the comparisons she still makes here. Like right here. If I can get it again. There we go. Did it again, right? In a way, a heavy viewer's life is as imbalanced by his television habit as a drug addict's or an alcoholic. So again, that comparison being made right there. Then she's indicating here that she's making her final point right there. Okay. Move down again. So sort of the end here. Whoops. There we go. And if you look at the end, the measure of health writes Lawrence Kubia's flexibility, especially freedom to cease when sated. The television viewer can never be sated with this television experience. They do not provide true nourishment that satiation requires, unless he finds that he cannot stop watching. It may seem like there's more to this essay, and there probably is, because remember what we said earlier, this is an excerpt from a book. So there was stuff ahead of this, and there was stuff behind this, and we just cut it out and took this little bit here. So we saw that the purpose of this opening was to show, hey, we throw the word addiction around lightly when it's not being applied to drugs and alcohol. And one of the ways we throw that around lightly is stuff like television. We shouldn't throw it around lightly. Television addiction is as serious as the addiction to drugs and alcohol. Okay, that's sort of the point, the purpose of the essay. Now let's talk about its tone. For that, we gotta go back again. You've read this once, so you're gonna reread it when I'm done with you here. Did it strike you that there was much in the way of humor? I mean, you're looking for it here. Not really. I mean, she says this, but that's to comment on other people's humor. Nothing humorous here. This is not funny. And that fits her point that the television addiction isn't funny. She's not going to be funny here. I mean, a humorous tone would have subtracted from the purpose that this is a serious matter. Television addiction is serious. So she can't really joke because that would belie the point. Does she have any references to science or scientists? Well, she's got an example here of what she would call an addict, although she calls it a heavy viewer. Okay. And then earlier, if I want to back up again, she had this quote. Oh, whoops, that kind of went with me, didn't it? She had this quote from E.B. White, but that was only to talk about gardening. We're not going to really use that there. Okay. So we're not seeing an awful lot of science here. And why might that be? It might be because she's making the point before anyone else did. There's no real science on this because people haven't treated it seriously. So the very idea that she's lacking in scientific credentials as far as the quotes are concerned might be the point. The lack of scientific studies of this issue is the point, that we haven't treated this seriously. Scientific studies don't exist, or at least aren't being quoted by her, because they haven't been done. Does that make sense? So I know you normally think, well, it's a weakness that she doesn't have these scientific quotes, but that's the whole point, that there aren't any. So her lack of science-based allusions and quotes is itself proof. I know that sounds backwards, that the lack of proof is proof, but in this case, it works. Okay? So anyway, back to tone. The reason I brought this all up is, in a way, the tone is scientific, even though it is lacking in scientific credentials. Maybe clinical would be a better tone. That this is written in a way that sounds very clinical, almost like a doctor might explain it, or, like I say, a scientist. It's not written to be funny. It's not written in a familiar way, but it's also not hectoring. It's not ordering us to do something or chiding us for failing to do something. It's not quite a lecture, but it's in that family. I think you'd agree. Right, I hope that this helps you as you go on and do the rest of your study. So we're going to end this now, but you can watch it at your leisure if you need to rewatch this, okay?